Looks like something out of Empire Strikes Back. However, what I have is a chunk of flint, which on one side looks a bit of a mess because it's got the cortex on, and when you look inside, that's a beautiful black stone. The old platform that's there, look, this bit here is in pretty reasonable condition, so I reckon that's worth giving a whack. So I'll lower the camera, get on with the job, and we'll see what happens. There. I think you can see what's going on. And I want to hit that right there. Well, it was on target, look. But it needs another little tap. Now that worked out pretty damn well. But that's only a part of the problem, you know, because we've still got that to deal with, all this thick section. And this bevels over like that a little bit. So, let's get round the back of this. First of all, I'm going to turn it over this way and take that flake out, right? And the reason for doing that is because now I can get right here, and by getting there I can take all of this piece out. It'll all come together, and all these flakes, look at them, usable. Sharp as a razor blade, and look, it might not kill it all in one go, but each time you take a bit, that's a bit more of it gone. Climb up there a bit deeper. Perfect little, I'd describe that as a cortically backed knife. Nice blade. And because now you see this twist has come further across than the actual centre, thinking of the middle of the stone right here, tilt it down so you can see what I'm on about. There, I should be able to hit it there, and we're starting to create a balance between both sides of the stone. Turn that back again now. This is just such a, you can see every one, can't you? Such a fine grade of flint. There's not a lot of it, but it's fine. And sometimes that's what you need. That didn't work out because I kept connecting with the cortex. So things are going good. And look, you've got a kind of almost like a lion print on that cortex. It's quite gorgeous. So what we're left with here is a sort of heavy duty zigzag. And that's fairly easy to deal with, because all we do is say like this one here, tilt that in, that bit there. We'll do a little bit of a braid in here, and the plan being is we take away anything loose and fragile. So that's a solid area now. And then we'll turn it over, and we're going to smack that right there. Just bring you right in. Nice little blades for arrowheads. What I'll do with them is I'll collect them, and then when people order the little napping kits off me that I have on Etsy, I chuck them in because they're well usable for making arrowheads. Or I just make arrowheads myself, whatever comes first. Turn it back, so I'm going after this one now. Oh, this is just a scorching piece of stone. So it's flattening out quite nicely, look. So on this side, literally it's beveling over that way quite hard. As you can see, that makes this quite hollow, right, because the flakes have just come out, and this quite full. So there's an order to things. Because I took all of the material out there, then what I do is I make a new platform from this edge while I'm looking at the surface that I'm about to nap. If you're ever going on a flint napping course, either with me or with somebody else, these videos are useful because it gets your mind understanding the procedure before you go on the course, and that way when you do go on a flint napping course you sort of get the picture a lot quicker. So pay attention. And there's not much there to go for, so just take one more there. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to deal with this side, look. Just sort of passing through that cortex a bit. Let's use a bit more of this platform up just here. That collapsed around that old bulb percussion like that. But that's fine, it's still got the length. So I've been out this morning. Basically I got up, hooked up the trailer and went off to collect some flint. There wasn't an awful lot. I managed to find half a trailer load of flint. But it's not too bad stuff, great for making hand axes and things like that. But just obtaining flint in the first place at the moment is really hard, because we live in a time where you can't just dig a hole. And the quarries, there's not a quarry that I know of at the moment that's really hitting good flint. They used to. But that's alright, there are still places to go. There's rivers that you can go to and collect flint, and there's areas along the coast that you can pick a few bits up. Right, what I'm going to do is I'm going to deal with this now, and that's going to establish the length of this. I'm going to come down to a lighter soft hammer, which is going to be a bit... See, we're anchoring that round and getting down to the flint by removing that cortex. Going to have to lose a little bit. Yeah, so there is loads and loads and loads of flint there, but like I said, get into it. Sometimes I wish I'd become a carpenter or something instead of a flint napper. At least you can see your material growing above the ground rather than hundreds of feet under it. So this is going nicely. Just come up and wait a bit. dodgy area. Worried myself a bit there, thought I was going to snap it in half. That's what happens when you bounce off. Good. I needed that flake to come off like that. It's a bit of a steep rise there, so that's why things are a bit more tricky. One of the reasons I actually nap outside is so that I'm not breathing all that dust in. Well, I can't stand being indoors anyway, but if you breathe that dust in repetition, that'll give you silicosis. I've been napping since I was 5 years old, and I kind of breathe quite heavy. But I don't think I've got silicosis, and that's because my napping's done outdoors. Right, so things aren't going too bad. What's basically happened since we started is we've gained control of the whole thing, meaning that there aren't any indiscriminate lumps. That's probably a challenge right here, but the rest of it is plain repetition of taking flakes from one side, setting up a platform, then removing flakes from the opposite side. And if all that goes smoothly without causing any hinges, then there's no reason why I can't get a nice little dagger blade like I've set out to her for this. A lot of the time when I'm napping, what you'll be looking at is, as I'm moving backwards and forwards with this hammer stone, I'm sort of just building up the edge, thicken it up, so that when I do get a flake to come off, it's got a little bit of meat to it. Right, what I'm going to try and do is I'm going to try and reach across here from this side rather than getting a flake to come through that side. There's just this, if nothing else, I'll just take a bit of weight off the top of that. You see what I mean? So that's no longer an impending sort of like problem. The nice thing about this, because it's such a clean piece of stone, you get it thin enough, you know, light's going to actually travel right through the middle of it, which would be really awesome. because it's got a kind of a brownish orangey glow. And I want to have as little of this sort of fizzle ending flakes as possible. That's almost the last little bit of cortex gone there. So it'd be fair to say that when you're sort of thinning and shaping, you've got primary flakes, which are big flakes, which are cutting across to remove the middle, and then what you've got is you've got sort of organisation flakes, which what they're doing is they're holding the sort of ovation, the curve, so that when you push in to take them big heavy flakes, there's actually a swollen area to take from, because if there isn't a swollen area, basically the flake is too thin and it can't actually get out to the middle anyway, and if it does, it doesn't leave behind a particularly rewarding flake scar. And that's one of the things we like about the finished artifacts, is the look of the flake scars that are left on the surface. So if they're all stuck into the material and they're not finalising themselves properly, you don't get a good looking implement, you just get a shape. And when you're doing it, you're passing through them moments so quickly, it's actually quite hard to actually stop and explain each time whether you're shaping or taking primary flakes. So, but you might be detecting that with the eye anyway. So this particular one, instead of having a flint handle, because the flint wasn't really long enough, although it could be, it depends on, you know, how, you know, you could have a knife like that quite easily, but the original plan for this is it's going to go in a wooden handle with a little bit of stinging nettle binding around the wooden handle, for basically to bring about a look about it more than anything else. I'm going to try and deal with this little lump here. That went well. It's always a bit scary changing hammers because you get used to one hammer in the hand and then the next hammer might behave slightly differently. But it's good if you can get used to changing, because a little soft hammer moves at much higher speed than a bigger one, and therefore it can give you a sort of a different flake scar to the finish. Getting the light through to the middle, look. If you see a wasp come along, you might see me run away, owing to the fact that my last 2 wasp stings have had bad reactions. I'm now a carrier of an EpiPen, and last week I had actually even had the ambulance here. Never used to have a problem with wasp stings, but apparently now I do. And there's a lot of them about this year. So this is coming along quite nice, wouldn't you say? And there's room for me to bring this side across, look, and that'll all straighten all the order up. So that one's gone right over, look, and actually that flake's spread out and pretty much done exactly what I wanted it to do. You can see at the back of this flake, so that's really helped out quite dramatically. And probably one more. Oops. That one has stumbled a little bit right at the back here, look. So you can't actually look, the flake would have sat in there. So now I've got to come back that way to rectify that. But luckily again, what I've done with that flake is I've rectified that problem too. So slowly what we have is we have quite a nice little flake plan coming together. I will come and pick these bits off now You can take them to a shorter length just by tilting the flint down a bit. And then sometimes, like here, what I've got is I've got a little bit of a quite a difficult little shape in there to be sorting out with a heavy hammer. So what we do at that point, we can do a little bit of adjustment with a flaking tool, which is more organised than whacking it. You can whack it, but that just adds more likelihood of snapping it, or something similar to that. And we'll go back to this weight hammer again now. Good. Now, I'm not overly going to push my luck with this because I know where it's headed. This one's been ordered off of my website, and it's a fella who's bought it for his son, who's probably going to be using this quite forcefully. And if I just make it too thin, with his lack of understanding of how Flint operates, he'll probably bust it as quicker than I could actually make the damn thing. So I'll try and leave a little bit of value of Flint in the middle for him. Basically how it works on my website is you can't just go on there and order a knife, because I might not have time to make it. So on the website there's a little section in the shop, and you can apply to buy, and if I've got the time then I'll accept the order. And that's kind of works for me, particularly with all the trips that I've got planning coming up. On the tip here I've got a little bit of a bumble, let's just call it a bumble for the sake of argument. Basically what happens is a little bit on the thick side, and I'm probably safer just taking a few flakes off with the pressure flaker. Just there. So a couple of them plunged over, but I'm okay with that because this is slightly over length anyway. It's coming along quite nicely. Right, so even though it looks like a dagger now, it's still a bit broader than what I want, so what we're going to do is just continue to take that edge over. Then all said and done, the truth of the matter is this is such a nice flake of flint that it's a joy to be working. You can still screw it up at any time, you know, that happens. But we just try and take care. Quite often what I'll do on a knife when I'm making it is it might get finished up with pressure flaking, but if I can I'll choose not to do too much of it, because what you'll do is you'll disrupt the actual natural pattern of like these cast flakes, and they're quite nice all by themselves. That's what I thought. That one was going to stop right there. You'd think that most of the problems are out the way now, but actually sometimes the finishing and getting the finishing sweet can be one of the hardest bits about it all. try and bring this across a little bit. It's see, that's the tricky bit. You know, you think you've got it almost there, but it looks slightly out of balance. And you can get balance back from several different directions. You have to choose which one is going to work most effectively. About nails on the blackboard, hey? Good. Well, the forecast was thunder and clouds today, and right now it's feeling totally tropical. So with a nice bit of flint like this, what it really would deserve is to be ground. I'm talking like grinding an axe and polishing it to become completely smooth, and then you could actually present a perfect flake scar set on it. That would really run the hours up. But and if I didn't need to make this knife for the order, I think that's exactly what I would do, because the stone itself is gorgeous. Good. There's a little hinge there that was bugging me, and I've just managed to get rid of it. So let's just narrow down the back of this a little bit, which is the bit that's going to go inside the handle. stubborn little bit. You get little bits like that, and basically if you looked at it microscopically you'd see exactly why the soft hammer wasn't passing through. There would have been like a little crest presenting itself to the surface, and doesn't matter how small it is, you'll just bounce off them, and that is exactly the time when things get snapping in half, so you have to be pretty careful all the way. I'm usually leaking from blood, but today it's sweat. So, this is my pot of pitch. I need to be a little bit careful because it's on fire at the moment. Basically what I want to do is I want to dip the back end of the knife in it. Some nice gloopy gunk and fit that into that bit of wood. I'll just let that set, and then I'll put a little bit more in from the edges, and then we'll bind it up. So she's coming about, and next part is with all these stinger nettles that I've been collecting. I'm going to start the cordage, but first, literally these nettles have just been drying. So what I've got to do is start stripping them down a bit and getting just some finer pieces. It makes cordage a lot easier if you've got finer pieces of cord rather than thick bits, otherwise you get sort of a, well, if you're making string you don't want great big lumps and bumps all the way along. You can also run it through your hands like that using a fingernail or the thumbnail to knock off all the big bumps. So it's not what I'd describe as retted, although it's partially retted. And it becomes very serviceable, suitable for the job. And then once you've got a bit to go, then what we do is we begin the process of actually making the cord. And literally what you're doing is you're pushing it until it begins to do this, and if you just keep adding twists in, you're going to get a string. But what we're going to do is I'm going to get involved with that with my hands like this and making a much tighter and finer cordage. Right, and I'm going to need about 3 to 4 foot for this. So this is a nice way of doing it, and once I detect that things are getting a little bit light on either side or a little bit short, then it's time to add in. And all you do with an add in is literally lay that into the pack like so and twist it in and carry on with the job. There we go. So probably got enough cordage for the job there now. I hope so, because I've locked the knot off from the end. And here we go. So I'm just going to lay part of that on the side there like that, hold that down, and then begin to wind that round there. That'll go around 3 full wraps and then begin the descent. I'm going to go around that twice. And then begin the journey back up, getting them to cross over right in the middle, so I get that effect on it, which is quite nice. And finally I'll just go through that and pull it up nice and tight, which you can do if your nettle cordage is good. Now the thing is, I don't want any of that slipping about, so I'm bound to get the glue hot again, coat that all in glue so it stays exactly where it is. Otherwise, as soon as he gets it, that's all going to start moving about. So I'll do that and then I'll show you a final finished product.